Hello everybody, so today we're going to be reading a new story that I promised I would read to you guys, and it is called A Drop of Color, Bloody Painter X Female Listener on here. I'm going to try and make it gender neutral, the best of my abilities, but I ain't perfect, so, yeah. So this is the summary of, summary slash, little taste of the story before we begin. So let's get started on that. Oh, but before I do, the author is Hannah. I will make sure to put a link to this story in the description along with the author's tag. So if you can't find the story, you can find the author and find the story. Bing, bada, boom. Alright. After spending several months at a distasteful job and attempting to make it on her own, Wyan eventually had no choice but to return home to live with her parents. Although home would never feel like home, for her parents had moved from the comfortable house where she had grown up in to a new house. New probably wouldn't be the correct word to use, for the house was old, run down, and definitely a fixer-upper. At first, everything seemed alright, although Wyan couldn't help but feel something calling to her in her dreams, drawing her towards the basement. It took a while, but after pushing aside several boxes and pieces of old furniture left behind by the past owners, to her utmost surprise she found a tiny door, just big enough for her to fit through. This is the door that would lead her to a new world, a world void of color and sound. There she would find the most unlikely of individuals, an artist. Inspiration drawn from the children's movie Coraline. And then they was like, I do not own the character Bloody Painter. All credit for the outline of this character goes to his creator. Alright. This is gonna be long too, I assume. Oh, I'm excited for this. Okay, y'all, so let's get started with it. Oh, I'm so excited. A new house. Now, before you two say anything, just remember that this house is a bit of a fixer-upper. Your mother had reminded you for what was probably the 15th time in the past 10 minutes as she pulled out one of those large, old-fashioned keys out of her coat pocket. Your eyes shifted towards the key in skepticism as you observed the way it was quite rusted, especially around the edges, yet ultimately decided to shut your trap. It would seem that your teenage brother, Grayson, had similar thoughts, as you merely catched a sight of his brown eyes told you that he wasn't too excited about this move either. Instead of commenting on the ancient appearance of the key alone, your gaze found itself moving about the expanse of the house. Just like the key, it was old. It was made of wood that seemed to be rotting in a few places due to the amount of rain that the mountainous region in which your parents had decided to move had produced. In fact, you were beginning to wonder if the cool, damp, and heavy air of the late morning was a common occurrence in these parts. Of course, it was nearing the middle of October, so maybe the season alone had something to do with the weather. Yet, you couldn't help but shake the feeling that this wasn't just a mere morning drizzle. The house had long been painted a peculiar shade of purple that had since begun to wash out, except the chimney was a pale green for some reason, and the window shutters were blue. Just as you were wondering what exactly was going through the previous owners' heads when they decided to paint the house in these colors, you were also baffled at the fact that your parents would choose to buy this house, of all places, to buy. As perplexed as you were, though, you really didn't have all that much room to complain, for your parents were allowing you to move back in with them. You had since been working at a warehouse job on the outskirts of Denver, Colorado, the city in which you grew up in. You were supposed that the paid job was well enough as far as warehouse jobs go. $18 an hour, which was a respectable wage for someone of 24 years and old in this economy. Therefore, your reasons for leaving the job were not from a financial standpoint. You made enough to even live on your own in a tiny but clean and comfortable apartment towards the city center. Instead, the reason you had decided to leave was due to the nature of the job itself. It was hard work, as you had to endlessly lug around boxes and crates all day. Not to mention that it was stressful due to the impossibly high daily quota that you were expected to fulfill. And the working conditions themselves weren't the safest. Not to mention, your coworkers were rather distasteful people. All around, it was a toxic working environment, and you needed to get out. Understandable. You had expected to move back in with your parents into the house in which you had grown up in. A modern and decently sized house in a suburban neighborhood about 30 minutes outside of the city. You had actually done so for the first month back in. And it was nice to be back in your childhood room. It didn't take long, though, for your parents to make the announcement that they had found the most beautiful, charming house in the small town of Diamond Hill, deep in the midst of the Rocky Mountains. That house is most definitely haunted. It sounds haunted, but it sounds cool at the same time. Grayson had commented as his eyes scanned the online house listing that your mother had proudly shown the two of you on the day of her announcement. "Oh, please," your mom snorted as she instead pushed her laptop towards you. "Take a look, Wyan." Well, you were looking, both online and in person, and you weren't too impressed with what you saw. You and Grayson watched with unamused eyes as your mom struggled with a key. It looked to be a very persistently stubborn key. One of those keys that if you didn't get it into the lock just right, it would refuse to open. Damn it! Your mother cursed under her breath as she pushed some brown hair out of her face. "I promise we'll get these doors replaced at some point. Let me call your dad to let us in. He should already be inside." Grayson mumbled something under his breath about the possibility of sleeping in the car should all four of you be unable to enter the house at any given time due to the key that looked like it came out of the 18th century, and you eyed him in pity. You had to admit, he was definitely being a very good sport about the entire ordeal. Yet, you knew your little brother. Even if he wouldn't admit it, you knew that he was upset about having to switch high schools, and he was now unable to graduate with his friends. The people that he had been close to since elementary school, ever since he was adopted into your family. After all, you knew the loneliness and fear of being adopted all too well as a bit of an older kid as you had been through it yourself. Not quite understanding your place in not only your new family, but also your new environment. The scratch and dramatically agreed brass doorknob jiggled a bit on the other side until finally the creaking sound of an old wooden door swinging open greeted your ears. The wood and bolts had kept the door in place, protesting dully at the sensation of being opened. "There you are!" Your dad beamed widely at his family standing on the opposite side of the door. "The movers just left about an hour ago. All of our stuff is now here, although not much has been separated into the correct rooms yet." "What do you think?" your mother asked excitedly, being the first of the three to actually enter the house. Grayson merely shrugged his shoulders and made a noise that couldn't be considered an actual word in any of the world's languages, and you understood how he felt. Yet you didn't quite have the heart to be as difficult as your moody brother, although you did suppose that you hadn't had as much to lose as he had. So you couldn't really blame him for his lack of interest in the entire affair. Okay. Maybe it'll be nice once everything has been cleaned up and organized. You half-heartedly attempt to give at least a little bit of a compliment as your eyes scan the interior of the foyer. The wallpaper was atrocious, looking like it had been placed in the 1970s, or even earlier. The wooden floor creaked no matter where you had decided to place your foot, and then about an inch of dust coated just about every surface and area that you had managed to find. One of the windows had a crack in it. The kitchen appliances were outdated, and there weren't nearly enough electrical outlets for neither you or your brother's modern purposes. I know it's hard to see past all the dirt and clutter. Your father's attempt to sympathize as he pushed his thin wire glasses up his nose. He would have ran his fingers through his graying hair if it hadn't already started to thin. So instead, he straightened the collar of his football jacket in an effort to find something to do with his hands. But I think we'll all be comfortable here once everything is said and done. Good thing I'm off to college next year. Grayson commented as he nudged a few boxes out of his way and heavily plopped himself onto the couch, pulling out his phone out of his pocket as he did so. After scrolling through a few pages on his phone screen, however, he had let out another noise of disdain. What? No Wi-Fi? Come on! Didn't get around to setting it up yet. Your mother called out from the kitchen, already getting to work with heavy-duty cleaners together in a bucket and preparing to begin scrubbing out drawers and cabinets before placing dishes and cooking tools inside them. You suppose that your parents merely pretended not to hear the few curse words that streamed out of Grayson's mouth as he began to dig around a bit in his backpack and locate his switch. Oh my god, has a switch too? Nice. Don't get too comfortable there, Gray, your dad said, somewhat provokingly, you thought. I'm going to give you and Wyan the grand tour of the house, and then you will both be expected to help out with cleaning and putting things away. You wondered if Grayson would have anything else negative to say, yet he seemed content just to let out a huff of irritation and push himself back up into a standing position, reluctantly making his way to walk alongside of you and follow your father throughout the new house. At least you can start fixing up your room, you attempt to suggest. Just make sure your room is comfortable, and then you won't have to worry about the rest of the house. Yeah, I guess. Grayson muttered, sticking his hands into the pockets of his hoodie. No matter how annoyed Grayson was at your parents, the two of you always seemed to get along rather well, and he never took things out on you. For that, you were thankful. A certain sibling bond, you supposed. After observing the expanse of the first floor, second floor, and attic, you had come to suppose that every room was more or less the same. Everywhere you looked was dusty, dirty, and rotting in places. Certain doors didn't latch properly if you tried to shut them, and some didn't even close all the way. Some windows refused to open, while the locks didn't even work on others, which was concerning enough. The attic was hot and stuffy, with no ventilation system, and you feared of storing just about anything in there due to the possibility of your items becoming damaged due to the mold that could possibly accumulate there. I don't think the parents thought of any problems that would have been in the old ass house. People should really think of these things. Okay, anyway, you had already spotted your share of spiders, yet on the bright side, had yet to notice any signs of rats or roaches. Finally, you found yourself standing in the middle of the empty room which would serve as your bedroom. I figure that you could put your bed along against this wall. Your dad began to explain. These windows do open, so you can catch a nice breeze, since it does get a bit stuffy up here on the second floor. How come she gets the room with the windows that open? Grayson grumped as he was obviously making a reference to his own room and his particularly stubborn windows, yet your dad ignored him as he continued to babble. If you're alright with this room, we can begin carrying your stuff upstairs. If you have you can have my electric fan if you want, Gray, he offered. I don't use it that much anyways. You have a ceiling fan in your room, Grayson, your dad reminded him. And before you ask, yes, it does work. That should be enough to keep you cool. Besides, the heat won't even be a problem for us until next spring. By that time, you'll just be about ready to get out of here, won't you? What with college starting up next year and all. I still have to get through the entire summer. Grayson continued to argue as he folded his arms across his chest, pushing the sleeves of his jacket up to his elbows and exposing the almond color of his skin. And no, Ryan, I don't want to take your fan from you. Once you put your TV, computers, gaming systems, and everything else into your room, it'll get hot in there quickly. Well, maybe you can get a job and buy your own fan. Your dad snickered lightly. I had a job until you moved me. Grayson reminded him as the three of you began to make your way back down the stairs. Henry, quit picking on him, your mother chimed her husband as she made her way out of the kitchen and placed her hands firmly on her hips. He needs to focus on school, not getting a job so he can buy things like he needs. So he can buy things he needs like a fan. We'll get you a fan, Grayson. I'm the one that needs to start looking for a job anyway, he commented. When I still think that you should consider school. I'm not sure if college is for me, Dad. You instantly cut him off. Community college, at least? 2 years? You don't want to get caught up in another job like the last one. While your parents continued to lecture you about school, however, your gaze almost seemed to pull itself towards a single door that was off of the hallway, in the direction of a dark corner that was mostly unnoticeable unless you actually were looking at it. It was peculiar. Now, how your eyes were almost yanked towards the direction, and you were unable to stop yourself. Hey, where'd that door go? You asked, interrupting your dad mid-sentence as he continued to go on all about the career possibilities that would immediately open up to you upon attending community college. What door? He responded, following your gaze towards the door that seemed to stand out much more brightly than the others, despite the fact that it looked just about the same. In fact, it seemed just to be a little bit smaller, and the door was a tad duller. Oh, that one. I believe it goes to the basement, though we hadn't been able to open it. It's locked tight, and none of our keys work on it. A key. You wondered if it was hidden somewhere. Ooh, that sounds fucking interesting. Alright, this is chapter 2, A Peculiar Dream. Excuse me. After rolling up your sleeves and filling several buckets to the brim with hot, soapy water, which you could probably go lukewarm within the next 15 minutes or so, 15 or so minutes, you got to work with scrubbing the hell out of the floors, walls, and dashboards of your bedroom. The amount of dust that accumulated on your cleaning rag after only one wipe across any surface was obscene, and you found yourself releasing sneeze after sneeze due to the tiny particles that would non-stop drifting into your nostrils. As you worked and scrubbed away, you allowed your mind to dawdle. At first, you thought about practical things, such as the limited job opportunities available in this tiny, run-down town. You couldn't help but grumble at the fact that in order to find any decent job, you would probably have to take on a sizable daily commute. You doubted that you would be willing to drive all the way to Denver, the closest pragmatic hotspot for jobs. It would take you 1 hour, at the very least, to get there. And that wasn't even to consider things such as morning traffic. You had also thought about Grayson, and couldn't help but worry about how he would manage to settle into the move. In fact, you were even predicting when a huge blowout argument between him and your parents would ensue. You hoped that you wouldn't end up getting dragged into it, for you really didn't want to pick sides. And yet, through all of the realistic and normal thoughts that followed through your brain, you just couldn't help but continue to see the outline of the basement door through the eye of your mind. You had no idea why, but you really wanted to go through that door. While you were absolutely positive that nothing in that room remained, for the previous owners of the house had left nothing else of their presence to remain in any of the rooms after they had left. You just felt drawn to it. It was a strange mixture of curiosity and warning. Light and darkness. Even if the logical part of your brain told you that it was just a normal, dusty, and dirty basement with no significance at all, your imaginative side whispered to you that there was something there, something for you to find. Since you had begun cleaning your still empty room, for at least an hour passed, and you were glad to say that said room looked a lot brighter in its dustiness state. In its dustless state, after putting up a bit of elbow grease into it, and you had also managed to shove your window open. It would seem that your dad was indeed correct, and the window did in fact open. It was still a rather stubborn window, and didn't want to open on command. You weren't even sure if it was the right idea to open a window when the weather outside was damp and grim. Yet you were a bit desperate to air out the room and rid yourself of the musky and stale smell that coated every inch of the room. Only one more thing to clean, you stated to no one in particular as your eyes zeroed in on the last piece of work that had to be done in your room before you began to drag in boxes and furniture, your closet. You hadn't even attempted to open it yet. In fact, you were kind of putting it off, for the door itself seemed even more persistently shut than your window was. It was old and wooden, just like everything else in the house. It was painted in an interesting shade of pale orange, and you imagined that color would have been rather lovely if the paint wasn't peeling and chipped. Although you had once again had to question the taste of the previous owner, for it did not mix very well with the mint green color that made up the walls of your room. Now that you had thought about it, a lot of the rooms in this house were painted in strange colors and tones, often with contrasting combinations. Maybe you would soon begin referring to this house as the clown house. Except for the basement door. The color of that door was the dullest gray you had ever seen, as close to colorless as a color could get, you supposed. Taking a deep breath, you gripped the doorknob tightly and began to tug on the door as strongly as you could without using too much strength and risk breaking anything. But the door appeared to be stuck. Come on, you grunted under your breath, and you couldn't help the few pathetic sounding grunts that escaped your lips as you continued to pull at the door. Unfortunately for you, it remained resistant to your efforts. Finally giving up and holding your hands up in the air in surrender, you glared at the door and even gave it a light kick in an attempt to get the last word in. Mumbling under your breath for a few seconds, you wrung your aching palms together before taking in yet another deep breath. Grayson! The complaining and otherwise undistinguishable answer of your brother called out in response from the room next door. You were used to this answer, though, and have since came to refer to it as the Grayson language. Help me open this door, Gray. You tried yet again to get your brother's attention. It's stuck. No verbal response greeted your ears, yet the creaking sound of footsteps approaching your room told you that your brother had graciously decided to give you a hand. What you trying to do? He asked with a yawn as he lazily sauntered his way into your room. This door, you repeated, gesturing towards your closet. I can't get it open. Can you try? And what have you been doing anything? You look like you just woke up. Grayson rolled his eyes in response. Yeah. I brought my mattress all the way up here. What have you done? You rolled your eyes right back at him, assuming that this was the code for taking a nap. Look, let's just get this open for me, please. You're stronger than me anyway, since you spend half of your life at the gym, and the other half napping, I guess. Yo, shut up, Wayne. Grayson countered, yet laughed a bit all the same, making it sound like I don't do shit. Pushing you lightly out of his way, Grayson made a show of pretending to spit on his hands and rub them together, to which you cast him a grossed out look and shook your head in disapproval, causing Grayson's brotherly smirk to grow just a bit wider. Grasping his hands tightly around the doorknob, it only took him a few large and strong tugs before the door decided that it was finally going to comply. Wrenching the door to your closet open with a splintering and somewhat dangerous sound, Grayson clapped you on the shoulder before making to exit your room. Mind bringing my dinner up to me tonight? That's the price for waking me up and for my hard labor. You couldn't help but hiss at his choice of words. Hard labor is a bit of a stretch. Look, you can't avoid them forever. Of course, them referred to your parents. You knew that the real reason that he had wanted to eat in his room was because he just didn't want to see your parents. Grayson shrugged and seemingly not surprised in the fact that you saw right through his demand. Not forever, just for now, he muttered, before exiting your room completely and returning to what you assumed to be his bedroom, for the door next to yours slammed shut soon after. Sighing, you turned your attention on the interior of your closet. Inside, it was even dustier than what the rest of your room had been, and you crinkled up your nose in distaste at the thought of cleaning all of this out too. Yet it had to be done, you supposed. Dragging a bucket towards you, you got down on your hands and knees in preparation for scrubbing the floors of your closet. As you wrung some water out of the cleaning rag, you caught sight of a tiny sparkle, deep in the darkest corner of the closet. Eyebrows furrowing in confusion at how something shiny and sparkly could possibly exist in such a dirty room. You crawled a bit towards the corner and reached a hand out, grappling around in the shadows until finally your fingers wrapped themselves around something small, cold, and metal. Pulling it out and opening up your fingers so that the object was exposed in your open palm, you stared at the object curiously. A key. Small and shining, yet completely colorless. You knew exactly what this key went to. You pocketed the key and told no one about it, and for some reason, you wanted to be the first one in the basement, and you wanted to go there alone. Yet, you couldn't possibly go there during the day, while everyone else was up and about. You would have to not only wait for everyone to go to bed, but also to sleep. And who even knew how long that would take? You suppose that you wouldn't really have to worry about Grayson, for you severely doubted that he would leave his room. But still, your parents, especially your dad, was known to stay awake well into the night. As it would turn out, your parents had ordered pizza for the night's dinner. After fulfilling your promise of taking a few slices up to Grayson, to which he accepted with a small smile before once again shutting himself in his room, you went about the rest of your evening before bidding your parents good night at about 9 in the evening and returning to your room. Crawling into your bed and feeling absolutely drained after a day of cleaning, you found yourself falling asleep rather quickly. After all, what else was there to do when you were still unable to get a Wi-Fi connection? Your dreams were colorless. Colorless, but there was definitely something there. Strange imagery would randomly pop up and intrigue you, such as tall trees with barren, twisted branches, black and white flowers with petals falling off one by one, fluttering softly towards the ground before disappearing, a flowing stream with a single boat drifting along, an extremely thin man sitting in the middle and attempting to fish, yet not quite being able to catch much of anything, a large gray city with darkened windows in each building. The streets were bustling, crowded, and busy, yet everyone had the same blank expressions on their face as they silently went about their business. And then a door surrounded by shadows and darkness. A plain wooden door creaking open without noise as it swung on its hinges. A bright, blinding light emitted from the crack of the open door before it snapped shut again, leaving your dream world in nothing but heavy blankets of pitch black. Eyes fluttering open, you exited your dream world just as quietly as you had entered. You stole a stole a glance at the clock that was sitting on your bedside table and noticed that it was nearing 2 in the morning. Most definitely your parents were asleep by this point. Damn, near the double's hour. Look at you. Silently, you swung your legs out of bed. Your bare feet hitting the wooden floor beneath you, and a bright shiver ran up your spine as the chilly October night caused the floor to become as cold as stone. If you were to do this, to really do this, you couldn't expect the basement to be clean or warm by any means. Pulling on a pair of shoes and socks and making sure that you were acquaintly bundled up in a warm sweatshirt, you left your room. It was a bit difficult to navigate through the house without making too much noise. After all, it was a new environment for you and you hadn't really gotten the hang of the layout yet. As if to make things worse, it was also dark due to the hour, and there were random boxes and pieces of furniture everywhere. You had ran into things and stumbled your toes more than once. It was definitely a good idea to wear shoes. Passing through the kitchen, you came to a stop in front of the corner that was noticed by few. Most likely the dark corner in the house, just a little bit darker than the corner in your closet that you had found the key. Staring at the plain gray door, you reached a hand out to touch it, running your fingers along the surprisingly smooth wooden surface. It was better to reread that. Sticking your hand into your pocket next, you pulled out the key that you had found and inserted it into the lock, giving it a careful turn. There was no typical clicking sound to indicate that the key had worked, yet the knob still turned in success, and the door opened without so much of a creak or splinter, very much contrasting with the other doors in the house. You opened the door. Ooh. Damn. Oh, also, this is the author just letting us know that this is not a horror story. This story may get dark at times, and there may be some scary scenes. Okay, thank you. And then they're not intending Helen to be a yandere in the story. Okay, good. That is very good. We do not need any more yanderes in our lives, do we? No. We do not. Well, I am sorry, y'all. I gotta cut this on a cliffhanger. I am so sorry, y'all, but you're all sadly gotta cut it short and gotta go, cause I kind of got a haircut today, which is technically Saturday for me, and I deep conditioned my hair while I was reading this, and I have to go wash my hair. So I'm so sorry, guys, but I do hope you guys did enjoy it. What do you guys think we're going to see as soon as we open that door? Let me know in the comments down below. Also, let me know, do you guys think the house will be think about it, y'all. Think about it. Why would anyone want to pick a house like this? Now, I never seen a purple house physically in my entire life, but I feel like it'd be cool to see one. And then seeing one that's probably way back in the day, whoever bought this house and whatnot. To think that they painted probably this house, or it was pre-painted just so beautifully or something like that, into a really cool shape, color, etc. It makes me think wow, this house must have been very unique whenever it was in its time, in its glory days, but now it's not really in its glory days. And at the same time, who would buy a house that could potentially have mold in it? We're talking about everywhere mold that could kill somebody. Don't know why they would want to buy that, especially since there haven't been any renovations and they would have to pay for all of that. I do not know why, but to each their own. Honestly, the parents really should have thought of that, honestly. And I do get about her brother, so yeah. But just let me know what did you guys think this house would look like in your eyes? What shape, what type of style? If you want to draw it, and you want me to show it to the community or anything like that, you guys can send it to me through TikTok or through Discord. All my social medias are in the description down below. You can send it through me through there, and we can talk about it if you want. Honestly, what I think this place would look like, y'all gonna have to give me a minute. I'll probably post it on the communities. But I'll show y'all guys what I think this house would honestly look like. But I would have to go back and find out the details again, and then my imagination about what the house would look like in my eyes. Um, and then I'll put it on the communities. And if you guys have a drawing of your own and you want me to see it, go in my description and go through my social medias and see where you can send it through. Especially, you could even follow my Snapchat and like send it through there. I will follow back, I promise. And yeah, or just comment down below if you did send it and I didn't post it or anything, or if you want me to just text me first and then we'll talk about it. All right. Anyways, your girl just have to leave. Sorry. So, I hope you guys like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for amazing videos, guys. I really do hope you enjoy like the first part of the story. It is really good, very unique. I'm glad that they have some mentions of adoption, because you'd be surprised the amount of stories you read, and not once it barely mentions anybody being adopted into family, and any details about that character. So yeah, I hope we learn more about Grayson and ourselves, and how more emotions that go into that relate to adoption and new family and all that. So hope we get digging into those, and I feel like we will, because this author is really good at writing like other type of concept, and it's kind of similar to it. So we shall see. Anyways, you girls gotta go. Bye and peace.